Before we get into the conversation, I just want to chat about something that is not only super important to me, but also comes up time and time again in my conversations with spaces and their founders. I'm talking about health and well-being, which I know means a lot of different things to different people. For me though, this is just all the little things that I do on a daily basis for my mind, body and soul, whether that's going for a run, taking 10 minutes to meditate, or just catching up properly with friends and family. In fact, one of the reasons I actually started Curated Spaces was to really champion this idea that well-being comes from doing the things that bring us joy and spending time with our favourite people in the places that we love. I've been incredibly lucky to travel to some absolutely amazing places with the podcast, and with this I've had to rethink some of my daily habits. I just wanted to share some of the things from Duty Free's new mind, body, soul concept, which has helped keep me sane when living out of a suitcase. Now, first up for me is sleep. I need my 8 hours and I'm addicted to anything lavender when it comes to winding down. My all-time favourite is the pillow spray from This Works, which has lavender, chamomile and vetiver essential oils, which help to restore normal sleep patterns. The clue is in the name, but you just spray it on your pillow before you go to bed and boom, a great night's sleep is guaranteed every time. I always stock up when I'm coming back from holidays and honestly don't travel without a bottle of the stuff now. Next up, diet. The first few weeks of Curated Spaces, I was living off coffee, sandwiches and free hotel biscuits. And honestly, I could tell when I was just not getting my protein fix. I actually discovered Form Nutrition Super Blend Protein when I was grabbing my pillow spray. It's a super high quality protein powder and actually has added greens, so I can chase my 5 a day even when I'm on the move. And now skincare. I have been obsessively applying SPF 50 every day for the past 15 years, and I have just started to add collagen to my routine with Vida Glow Natural Marine Collagen Sachets, which you actually put in your morning coffee. It's completely flavourless and is absolutely amazing for skin, hair and nails. I feel like autumn and winter really take their toll, and my new morning collagen coffee ritual has been such a godsend to help keep everything clear, smooth and hydrated. Finally, it's that time of the year when everyone starts getting sore throats, which is not ideal when you're trying to host a podcast. My friend was raving about the Biocol Labs sore throat relief spray, so I picked some up at the airport recently, and it's not only soothing, but also contains propolis, which provides immune defence as well. I picked some up at the airport recently, and it's not only seriously soothing, but also contains propolis, which provides immune defence as well. Now, a simple life is a good life, and you can actually find all of these products in Duty Free at Mind, Body, Soul. They've really leveled up their game recently and made it super easy to find the products that will help you stay calm and relaxed while on the move with their 3 pillars that promote physical and mental well-being. I should also mention that all of the brands featured in the Mind, Body, Soul Duty Free shop are carefully curated for their ethically sourced, organic or natural products with environmentally friendly packaging wherever possible. My flight was actually delayed the last time I was travelling, and I had the best time browsing through everything in store. I even treated myself to the Nuco functional fragrance, which smells so good. It's like bergamot meets cardamom herby scent, and was also developed following research into the connection between the cognitive and the olfactory system, aka your brain and sense systems. It's an incredibly calming scent, and I've never been more chilled out by a late flight in my life. If I wasn't delayed, however, I would have been very grateful for the reserve and collect aspect of worlddutyfree.com, which means I can pre-order up to 24 hours before I get to the airport and pick it up on my way to the gate. Anyway, I hope this was helpful, and honestly, next time you're travelling, make sure to head to Mind, Body and Soul and stock up on all those wellness goodies to make sure you're feeling your best, even when on the move. Now, let's get into the conversation. Welcome to Curated Spaces, the podcast that explores the stories behind the spaces reimagining how we stay, work and play. Join me, Molly Cooper, as I sit down with founders, owners and thought leaders to hear about their journey of bringing a space to life. Great spaces shape our lives. They inspire, nurture and connect us. But most importantly, they bring us together to share life's milestones with the people who mean the most to us. So, whether you're a traveller, foodie or design seeker, join us as we celebrate the power of spaces and the brilliant people behind them. Today I'm on the Norfolk-Suffolk border at Fritton Lake, a space to stay, no prizes for guessing, with a 2-mile-long lake at its heart. From wild swimming to stand-up paddleboard and even a floating sauna, everything is about enjoying and conserving this pioneering rewilding project. And I'm delighted to welcome Hugh Crossley, the mastermind behind this incredible space, to the podcast. Hugh, welcome to Creative Spaces. How are you doing today?
Thank you. Well, very well. It's lovely to have you here. A bit gloomy in the weather, but
it is a little bit. It might get so dark so early these days in the run up to Christmas.
well, I hope it's not going to put you off having a sauna and a cold water swim.
Absolutely not. If anything, it's going to make it all the sweeter, I'm sure. And I can't wait to talk floating saunas with you. But first, I'd love to hear about you and your background and how everything's going here in Norfolk.
Yeah, so I was very lucky to grow up here in Somerleyton, which is, as you say, right on on the southern end of the Broads, with the North Sea 2 or 3 miles behind us, and right on the border of Norfolk and Suffolk. So I'm kind of definitely got a foot in both camps.
Very diplomatic.
Although Fritton Lake, which is most important part of the business in a touristic sense, is in Norfolk. So it was a idyllic childhood in the kind of back end of the 70s. In fact, looking back, it seems impossible that we lived the way we did compared to now. But it was we were very lucky. Mum and Dad sheltered us to a large extent from the world around us, and it was kind of very sort of swallows and Amazons-y and famous 5e, I guess. And then really after school, I suppose the sort of salient parts of my life up until coming back here when my father was becoming ill in 2005 was having had a very good education, having nearly joined the army. I actually I travelled a lot in the Middle East, and I ended up in kind of hospitality. Not I might add by design, but because I had a great love of the Middle East, and I kind of wanted to pull, in a sense, the Edgware Road into the popular mainstream. Having tried to go down there and sort of make myself into a modern day Lawrence of Arabia and smoke shisha, and it was special for me. And so I had my first restaurant called Dish Dash, which is the flowing long shirt, full length shirt, collarless shirt that an Arab man would wear is a dish dasher. So, but also fast food in a sense. And I always told my father it was kind of like my short service commission in the army, because it was very tough. We didn't get shot at, but it was relentless work and very bonding. We had a very tight team. It was great experience, and I sold out of that really in order to come home in about 2005. And we're lucky we own a pub here, and as we'll talk about later, Fritton Lake, which was already a kind of day visitor attraction. So there was kind of leisure hospitality in the family business, which I kind of grabbed hold of, and that wasn't enough really. So in 2010, I think, 2014, I opened a kind of artisan chip shop in Norwich, which was another great event, and actually really did deserve to go further than it did. But we just took a short lease in a shop in Norwich, and after that I had young kids and kind of different priorities. So I've been here ever since. So.
Yeah. I love that kind of mix of things to your name there.
Yeah. I mean, it's it's been a great experience actually, and I guess one of the biggest things actually was, I suppose, I mean, we're a big family. I've got 4 sisters, but I was the only boy, and I was pretty shy, in most ways. Certainly when it came to going to parties as a sort of young teenager, I was painfully shy, and really that was kind of the way it was until I started working in what was my first restaurant, my own creation, as in it came out of my head, but I had no prior experience to running it. And of course, suddenly I had to be able to go to talk to people, anyone and everyone at tables. So it was very good for me in that sense. And happy memories.
Yeah, it's an amazing industry to be in for that sort of personal growth journey. And people... skills are so important within it. And I'm sure we'll touch on that again when we talk about Fritton. But first, let's paint a little bit of a picture for people listening in around, as you said, we're here right on the border. So would you be able to tell us a little bit about this corner of the world?
So I got into real trouble a long time ago in an interview talking about living in the Bronx of East Anglia. And I have to say that let's remember that the Bronx has become very cool in New York.
I take that as a compliment.
I think I was trying to refer that we were on that journey, but we weren't there yet. And Great Yarmouth is an incredible place with a very long and distinguished history, but it's sort of mostly in the past, and it's struggled since mass tourism has moved abroad. But basically, it's a very rural and kind of sleepy corner of East Anglia. it's very agricultural for the main part. And if you think about the great sweep, the bulge of East Anglia, you've got the sort of fetid North Norfolk coast, which runs in pure sand all the way down to Great Yarmouth. Suffolk actually is for the discerning beachgoer is a bit pebbly. There are bits of sand, but as a result of that, it doesn't attract so many people because it's a little bit harder, particularly with children. But quieter and rather idyllic with its river. Suffolk's got a lot of lovely estuaries for sailors. And yeah, we're lucky to kind of call it home.
Yeah, and driving here today, I came down from North Norfolk. It's a big region, and I think you forget that. In my head, it's the same size as Kent, but actually driving, it does go on, but beautiful. There's the bits of water that just come out and catch the light, and it's also rolling, and you can see for miles. It's a really beautiful part of the world. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think so one of the great defects, if you like, or maybe for some people it's a plus, but most counties have an area of outstanding beauty, and it might be very big, national park scale, or mountainous if it's sort of in the like Wales. But the Norfolk Broads, which is that feature here for all of us, is really very hard to see or imagine unless you're on a boat on it.
Yeah.
So we talk about it, but you'd never really get to see it. I mean, occasionally you cross a river, but it's and it's very wooded as well. The whole Broads landscape is unseen until you're within it, and even when you're within it, it's quite hard to discern it as a piece of geography in a way that you kind of can mountains or national parks or places that are high above you. You can sort of physically see them. So yeah, but it's fun.
It's a lovely part of the world. And talking of woods and bits of hidden water, let's talk about Fritton Lake then. So I know it's had a bit of an evolution in recent years, and I'd love to hear a bit about what it was originally and then this journey over the past sort of 5 years.
Yeah, well, I suppose just to set the scene, if you look at a Roman map of East Anglia, particularly this part, in fact, lots of other parts of Britain, but it was almost all underwater, the great fingers of water coming in. And so Fritton Lake, as it now is, was in fact just an estuary from the inland, the great inland sea, which wrapped around us. So it was very saleable. I mean, as in from you could come in almost anywhere. And then gradually, with sea level change, the Broads were dug for peat, which came sort of later in the we're talking about the 8, 9, 1000s, and then became little lakes that are all interconnected by rivers. Fritton Lake is exactly that. So it's a sort of early modern peat digging. It's a little bit for Suffolk, a little bit in a valley, and so it's the difference between the Broads is it's deeper, I mean, it's quite big for the average Broad as well, although it's quite sinewy and long. So it's kind of quite brackish, quite peaty, dark, soft water, lovely to swim in. And it was always really just farmed all around it, albeit quite gently, until the 70s, when my father, with a very enterprising guy who he's working with at the time, Norman Hudson, decided to create a kind of day visitor attraction, a kind of adventure playground, really. Adventure, then they call it Fritton Lake Country World, I think. But it was basically swings and slides and rowing and ice cream. Nothing very, technical. But in those days when Yarmouth was, still booming, and people weren't really able to go abroad on cheap flights, it was enormously busy. And in 1988 was the third biggest day visitor attraction in the country. It was like 126,000 day visitors, which is quite a, so I've got all these lovely books of cuttings. One has to remember that although now we think we're on a new phase, Dad, had that phase, but it just was in a different incarnation. And then much more recently, really, in fact, in 2004-05, we finally got consent for and a small number of log cabins. And really that moment was, I suppose, if you were to define the change, was when it began to shift from being a day visitor attraction, albeit that carried on until 2016, 17, 18, to being a kind of resort, holiday resort, a stay accommodation base. And then finally, after a lot of faffing around and going around in circles, as it turned out, just into the teeth of the first lockdown, we decided to turn it into a club. So, private members club. So for those people that own cabins there, and for whoever in the area, holiday makers, obviously, but also whoever in the area wanted to make that transition.
Yeah, And that's actually, we were just talking about it, weren't we? How interesting is it? In London, you have so many clubs offering this community, this space to go. And outside London, they just definitely peter out. And there's hardly any. There's obviously the Soho Farmhouse, which is, a different league of its own these days. But what kind of inspired that decision?
Well, I definitely would give a nod to Soho House in the sense I was lucky to be made or invited, became a member in the late 90s, because it coincided with when I had Dish Dash. And a friend of mine was in the same building as Soho House's office and said, "Oh, you've got to come and join this club because you can go there after work," which is exactly what we did. So, and of course, one wasn't thinking about it as anything big then. And of course, so I've seen it evolve, and that definitely helped a lot. But really, the other part was the sort of the economic and ownership dimension. Once we got to sort of 60, 70 cabins with owners, and once those people became, the cabin industry's changed from being kind of a caravan type industry to a really luxury product. So you got, a different type of person coming from Cambridge or East London. And so the tail that wagged the dog was really the people who owned the cabins. Yeah. And they really began to say from around 2016, probably 17, 18, but ever louder, actually, we reckon this is for us now.
And staked our claim.
Yeah. So, and of course they were quite right. They're the major part of the business now. So it was those two things really. It was the inspiration from being a member and it's been a great transition.
Yeah, and how was navigating that transition? Because it came right at the same time as the COVID.
Yeah, well, of course, like so many people, we'll talk about it forever. But we did actually plan to relaunch and we did it. We've got a beautiful new brand created to sort of demonstrate that breakaway. And it was St George's Day 2020, so it was in fact in lockdown in the end. So when we were allowed to open in the kind of high summer for the school holidays, basically, was, for everybody a very forgiving climate because, frankly, anyone and everyone was just so happy to be alive and be allowed to go somewhere.
And out the house.
That you could have served them terrible food and no service with sort of dirty sheets, and they'd probably still been really grateful. So, in some ways, it was easy, but of course, from an economic model point of view, it just like nothing was making any sense because you were having furlough and long periods closed right across. So next year will be technically our fourth year, but in real terms, only our second full trading year. So in some ways, it's sort of it's a sort of blessing, and it makes you feel like it's a sort of kinder, probably a more forgiving ramp up, in terms of the way people are analysing you and how you do things, which is is a bit forgiving, and in other ways, it's a bit disruptive to where you thought you might be from a pure income sense. So it's, but yeah, we're definitely not looking back.
No, definitely not. And then how was that sort of first initial, you already had your cabins, obviously, but getting maybe local people to come and become a member? Was there did they get the concept immediately, or was this sort of?
Yeah, so I think that's right. We did sit around and okay, I said it to you earlier, but it sounds patronising, but it really isn't meant to be. But we were very aware of the fact that this type of club is at that time anyway. I mean, as you say, they're the beginnings of one or two around now. But Soho Farmhouse anyway was really the gold standard, and so there was no really evidence that people wanted this around here, and also so we were aware we had to kind of sort of try and bring people with us, and what's really nice now is two things actually really mark it out for me. One is some of those people who kind of almost admitted to sort of hounding me on Facebook for making this transition. So, I came there with my kids in the 1970s, and how dare you, blah, blah, have since joined and have come on the journey and say, look, I gave you a really hard time, but actually it's amazing. Oh. And that's I think a real, nice thing to hear, that change and people to vocalize it. And the other one is, again, which we touched on, is, the dream that was Lara's and mine is kind of, incredibly lucky to have this extraordinary natural resource that we're adding to as a template for any business. It's a pretty remarkable place. So, but at the same time, all those little dreams of things, whether it's the bird hide or the beach or the sauna, they're all our little dreams that we drew on a piece of paper, really. And now they're actually made up. Their life is through the dreams of all those other people who become members. And listening to their interpretation, sometimes, earwigging, and other times when they talk directly to us. you suddenly realise it's taken on this. There's several clubs, and within the club, and it's no longer ours. Which is, by the way, what we wanted. It belongs to everybody, and in a weird way, in a different but similar way, it's not so different from how it was. Fritton Lake never really belonged to us in that sense. It was taken over by hundreds of thousands of holidaymakers, and now it's taken over by not hundreds of thousands, but thousands of members and cabin owners and holidaymakers. So it's an evolution rather than a revolution.
Definitely. And I think that's the beauty of spaces, where they're kind of fluid. You like you say, you have your ideas, you put them out there, and then seeing how people come and use them. I'd love to sort of understand, what sort of people do come to the club, or are your members now? Are they locals or a mixture of tourists?
Yeah. So, I mean, it obviously, just by dint of where we are, we've got, we don't market local membership that hard, but Norwich is the obvious place, and the hinterland between me and Norwich, a little bit into Suffolk. We there's a little thing we do, which is, and I mean, it's really broad. I mean, we've got quite a few. As I say, it's a farming region, so we've got quite a few guys who I know through farming who come and join. Really, so during harvest, their wife and kids have got a great local place to go, so because they don't see their husbands because they're on the tractor. And then you've got quite a few kind of hipsters and cool people from Norwich who I always kind of worry when they turn up, because they're all like much more fashionably dressed. And I think, we are investing, and we keep wanting to, but it's not quite farmhouse. And I'm worried about their interpretation of, our style, really. And then there's a lot that are, very invested in the kind of, not necessarily that they want to go on a safari, but they're very invested in the fact that this is a sanctuary for nature and for them. So wild swimmers and people who want to run, swim, do yoga, that's pretty strong. And I suppose the other obvious core is hospitality and food and drink. People just like the fact that it's, in the end, just another restaurant, but it's one that they can stay in and bring friends to, which is sort of just not, it's special by definition that not anyone can come, I guess. Yeah. So it's quite broad, and like any club, I guess I think this is what we feel, is it sort of self-filters, because once, whether it's that early morning swim that they want, or whether it's somewhere quiet to work online, away from home, if they're working from home, they're all drawn in by this identity of what has now become this club. So so we're kind of happy with the way it's going, but we're always conscious that we still have work to do on we would to keep that sort of interpretation and the brand in people's minds, as I know why I want to be at Fritton Lake, because it's a bit of a department store club. And the danger with a department store is you kind of forget where you're going. It's not like a hi-fi store where you go to buy hi-fi equipment. So we need to keep that idea going, and
Okay, and then let's dig into that, because I love this whole idea of department store. But actually, what are the few things that to you really encapsulate what Fritton is? Yeah,
well, I've got when we started, Lena, who I use for marketing, I like to always simplify everything down to things that I really understand. I said, look, we've got food and hospitality in the middle. And then we've got a wrapper of sport and recreation and well-being. And then we've got a wrapper around that of kind of nature in a sort of soft interpretation, whether that's just paddleboarding and seeing otters, or whether it's more immersive and, wanting to actually go foraging. And I think it's true that if you see that as a target, as in red is the center and then orange and then green, I think that is a fairly fair and accurate interpretation of the flow of people. And when you look at our holiday flow, we do hard sell or soft sell, but the rewilding and wild east and all that. And I think it is important to people if you actually ask them, but that doesn't mean they want to invest in it directly and come on a safari with me, which is great, because I don't want to be doing it all day. Most people end up like we all do, flake, but if it's good weather, flake by the pool while their kids do other stuff. But I think so. Yeah, so it's sort of, but that's kind of how we market it and perceive it, and the things that hang off that are obviously deep dives into food and drink, and maybe going to vineyards, and there's that kind of food thing and hospitality thing you can build on in the local area and at the club. And I'm so not anymore as much as I was, but it was definitely mattered a lot to me that there was a kind of healthy sporting and quite rugged version of that, as in, if you want to come here, you want to run, not go on a running machine. Yeah. And if you want to swim, you want to, it's not, I mean, we do have a really good masseuse and we do have some really good treatments, but we're kind of trying to differentiate ourselves as saying, we want this to be a more kind of rugged interpretation of health and well-being,
definitely,
rather than a pampered one. Not to criticize either. We'll probably end up having to do both, but that meant a lot to me, because that's the thing I always search for whenever I go away. What can I do? It's a beautiful place. Can I go anywhere? Am I trapped on this
that's
place?
it. Yeah. And I feel like often you go to places and actually could be anywhere. Yeah, it's in Greece, but it could be Italy. It's very sort of in a resort. You don't actually go out. You can't go running along the coast. So actually being able to come and get out in nature, out in the local area and sort of.
Yeah. I think that's, I think it is a huge sell. I mean, I'm not saying I'm, as my marketing people always tell me, Hugh, we love you, but you are not typical in marketplace. So we're not going to use your, but if I go to Wales, I know that wherever I stay, I can literally walk out and go for a run or go for a hike. And I may not, but I know I can.
Yeah.
But as you say, if you go to Europe or lots of other people like us, once you've done the kind of footprint, and you've gone around the building and you've found the gym and you've kind of hemmed in.
Yeah.
And that claustrophobia is for me the biggest appeal. Not having that claustrophobia is the biggest appeal.
No, I get that 100%. And you just touched on it there, this Wild East, the whole rewilding project. I know it's such a huge part of what goes on here.
Yeah, so Wild East was me and two great friends, but also farmers in one in Suffolk and one in Norfolk, actually. And we're all quite invested. I suppose probably we are more naturally environmentally conscious than some of our peers, but that doesn't, and a bit more eco-anxious probably. But anyway, we went on a trip to visit Paul Lister in Scotland, who has got a rewilding project up there and is quite a loud voice in that community. But he's engaging, and he's not for everyone, but he was great fun for us. But on that journey, 8 hours up and down, we kind of would. Sort of the big thing for us was, look, we could carry on patting ourselves on the back, doing ecologically sensitive things on our farms, which are quite big, but in the great scheme of things, very small. But actually, this is the problem with conservation. It's about lots of very small places doing very specific conservation things, and rewilding is really allowing nature obviously to take the lead. So we recognise that as well as needing a lot of land, what you actually need is a lot of engagement with people. But as we say, sort of window box, backyard, schoolyard, churchyard, farmyard. I mean, it needs to be a mass movement, and that was really missing. And so that was kind of what tipped us over the edge. That and being inspired by not just Paul, but the big things like the Tompkins conservation in Chile. How do you bring the magic and the beauty of those sort of places and the Carpathia into flat, very heavily agricultural and populated East Anglia, where we don't have bears, wolves, and snow-capped mountains? And actually, the answer is with a lot of difficulty.
Yes.
But that was sort of so we've got something called the Map of Dreams, and people pledge, and what again, of course, the real inspirational piece there is our dream was to ignite other people's dreams. And so it's kind of a bit of a Facebook of other people feeling empowered because they see and can reach out to other people in their neighborhood who are doing something. They're not alone. And that I suppose sounds a bit sentimental, but that's kind of, that goes to the heart of it. And it's been amazing. What it really did do is catch the public mood. We were, again, lucky it was a 2020 thing. It has tailed off. People are back, in the flow of life. And, it's more challenging to get funding, more challenging to, but what we have found is that what we call the clean energy coast, but all the wind energy around here, we're pulling them all into a kind of something called wilder by the sum of our parts, which is trying to together rather than separately talk about the positive stuff that's going on. And part of that is media. What no one gets is that, yes, plant a tree, but talk about it. I mean, and the more media engagement, the more people start to think, actually, you know what, maybe I could do something, or maybe I could do something different. And just because I've only got a window box or a small scrap of land, it doesn't mean that in fact, it's more important that millions of people do that than one big landowner does. It's because you're capturing, many more minds.
Yeah, that collective energy.
Yeah, so it's been great. I mean, it's funny because charities, as I've now discovered, are kind of course like businesses, but they're much more competitive and cutthroat.
Really?
When we opened our first restaurant in London, everyone can, oh look, if we can help you out, if you run out of something, I hope you get on really well. And it was really interesting for me because I was obviously a bit holding on tight to Dish Dash and didn't want anyone to see our menu, and was worrying about people copying and all that silly stuff. And then you get into but in charity, it's interesting how, and that's, people are it's very personal for other people, and they're giving up their time, and they're damned if anyone's going to take anything away from them. And of course, in our particular world, which is obviously nature and climate crisis and public engagement, we've been very, forthright about, unless you sign up to this Wilder Brothers Sum of Parts piece where we're together putting some money towards messaging, but also towards collaborative projects, then we're just not interested, because it has failed before because of that lack of joint up engagement. Too few people in too few places is kind of the way, and it needs to be everyone in all places, and that means collaboration.
Exactly.
But we're the minnows, so we're the new charity on the block, kind of, and the challenger brand, and it's been an interesting journey to try and keep evolving, so that if you get kind of copied to a degree, that you can keep out imagining people. But it's good. It's good fun for us, and it's very nice for me to have something that's takes you into something totally different, and a bit like you're doing this, it takes you into the lives of a whole range of people I'd never have any contact with.
Which is amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, and you're so right. Because actually, I live in a very small flat in London, but actually just knowing there's that bigger network or that bigger energy, that bigger thing to be part of, and just do your little bit, it could be so powerful, and you just need someone sort of spearhead that, don't you?
Yeah. It's been really good for us all, actually.
Yeah, amazing. Well, I'd love to know, looking ahead then, what's next for Fritton Lake? Do you have anything in the roadworks or?
Well, we have really, yeah. So, I'm afraid it won't look great when you see it tomorrow, but we started on the foundations of a new building. there's lots of little things, but there's a big piece of infrastructure that we need to deliver in the next sort of 12 to 18 months, which is, we've got consent for a sort of pavilion really between the pool and the tennis courts, which it will basically be our all-day trading hub.
Lovely.
And take that away from the clubhouse you're staying in, which can be more for ambient activity, like, working on your laptop and meeting friends. And so it'd be, also from a point of view of us, it's be built to trade in, whereas the old farmhouse, wonderful that is a collection of very small rooms. It's quite, if it's busy, it becomes dysfunctional to a degree. And I'm very conscious that it will help. Well, it will drive, help drive membership, help drive selling cabins. It's we were really conscious in October half term this year, if you remember, was 2 weeks of solid rain, and we were really busy, and it really showed. And I appreciate it's only that 2 weeks, that the clubhouse is not enough to really deliver in the event of a bad weather. So I'm really, really excited about that. And it's, it is a bit kind of, not a nod to, not specifically Soho House, but, big open plan, comfortable sofas and fires, but connecting also the pool, which is also very gravitational. Everyone, whether it's just your kids or people, even in winter, it's very popular. So that's a big thing. And I suppose I'm kind of excited about getting to 1,000 members. We're kind of like 60% is there, not quite 60% is there, and it's quite slow. It's sort of, as in we see it as something that you don't market hard membership. It's sort of by word of mouth and because otherwise probably it's the wrong thing. But that feels like a target in the next few years that we're really keen on, and actually we've still got 28 plots, cabin plots. So it's not, it's a few years away from being a mature business in a sense of what we've already planned. And I suppose the other thing that we're really doubling down on is this idea of, I love creating brands and the stories behind them, but I'm also aware that one can hold on too tightly to what that might mean, and we're working over the winter actually to try and sort of define, but also redefine and make stronger that kind of the tone of voice around the brand, because because we aren't Soho House, and we're not, we're very conscious when we look at our owner profile and the type of people. I always want to put wild and free on our website, and I always get told I can't because it's not free. But but you know, I think it encapsulates that we get a sense that people really like the fact that, to a large extent, you know, it's sort of their space to kind of, you know, get but that needs definition. I think the point is it's a bit like liberalism. If it comes too loose, then it falls apart. And so we're excited about that. And then I suppose the only other thing really is it's sort of more related to some related where I live, which we're kind of at least exploring how and whether it makes sense to kind of begin to in some way incorporate the hall with Fritton, you know, because actually, you know, they're both kind of, one's offering a slightly smarter version of the other thing, but just because, you know, we want to keep drawing people out here. So that and I guess my kids are at the sort of age now where it's quite exciting to have them around and go and on adventures, which, you know, they've all been quite small. So I think there's quite a bit of refocus for us on them as well.
Exciting times ahead. A lot going on, it feels. Such a pleasure chatting. I do have a closing tradition on this podcast. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions and you let me know what space comes to mind for you. It can be somewhere you've been, somewhere in the world. Imagine you've cashed the winning lottery check, so money is of no object. Okay. The first one is, where are you running away to disconnect and to detox?
I mean, kind of any mountains, but I mean, I'm a bit in good weather. I'm a big sucker for Wales. My mother's from Wales, so I think I'd have to say somewhere, you know, not necessarily Brecon, but in that part of South Wales is kind of. I've had a lot of happy times there. Very, very challenging in bad weather, but a real delight when it's nice.
Yeah. Oh, it's stunning. I was down there the other week and it's gorgeous. Very good answer. Love that. Staycay, represent the UK. Next one, your ultimate birthday party. Where are you hosting it?
Oh, well, we had a pretty wild one last year here, a joint sort of 50 and 40 all rolled over. But I think if I was going to do another one, you're right, I would have it smaller and host it somewhere else. And I mean, yeah, that's kind of interesting, isn't it? I mean, I think it would probably be ski tour based, but with a kind of ending somewhere where you can crank it up a bit.
I love that. No one said
I don't want to take it too seriously, but I think I'd get a small group to ski tour to meet a bigger group somewhere kind of fun, you know, where there's a bit of life in the Alps probably. Yeah. I think that's kind of probably what I'd do.
Brilliant answer. That might be my favourite yet, actually. Great one. And finally, your once in a lifetime bucket list trip. Where are you heading and are you staying anywhere special?
Well, I mean, I can't really give you a place to stay, but I mean, I was a big fan of A Short Walk in Hindu Kush, which is Eric Newby's seminal kind of book, and also Sir Wilfrid Thesiger and his travels around that kind of same area. But although it is quite unsafe and unsettled, I mean, northern Pakistan, that kind of areas, they both described as everyone has somewhere where they think is the most beautiful place in the world, but truly the most beautiful place in the world. So I think there, I'm afraid what I don't have is, you know, a walk like for a month or even longer, sort of through there. I mean, parts of Iran too, but I think I'd have to be staying probably on the ground to make that happen.
A tent.
I mean, I'd love to do it by horseback to a degree. I love riding, but that whenever if in 5 o'clock in the morning when I'm thinking about exactly those sort of things, the thing that worries me, I could die not having gone to South America and not having. No disrespect, but I would be very upset if I hadn't been able to go there.
Well, I think that's a very solid answer. 3 quite active answers, I'd say. Hiking, Wales, horseback riding, skiing.
Yeah, well, when my kids were very small, my obviously wife, we're both tired from young kids. Whenever we went anywhere, we could grab that. We went on a kind of more of a fly and flop. And not that we weren't necessarily active, but it was kind of just sleep for a week. Yeah. And I you know, after 10 years of that, I've kind of re-engaged with wanting to... You know,
the adventures again.
Yeah, the adventures.
Oh, well, I hope you get your adventures. It's been such a pleasure chatting.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And thanks for coming to the Wild East.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go and find that sauna now. Gosh, what a lovely chat with you. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did and can confirm I hit up the sauna after this and it was just divine. Get yourself out to Norfolk, visit Fritton Lake, you will not be disappointed. And now we have just a handful of episodes left in 2023 before we hit January, and with that, the first ever Curator Spaces mini-season, the London edition, with top spots around the capital, which I cannot wait to share with you. Now I'll see you next time for more Curator Spaces.